Om Shanti. I can't speak in Tagalog, so I have to speak in English. But it's a beautiful pleasure to be here in this gallery of all the history of the Philippines. So you must definitely go around and see everything if you haven't seen it already. And there's another one through there, which is very nice. So, mental health care is for people who are identified with mental health problems, right? Yes. No. Yeah. Well, you know, the thing is, people think I'm okay, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm not okay. So if I'm going to say I have a mental health issue, then they might think I'm not okay. So I won't say anything. This is how it works. But if you say caring for the mind, it's okay. It's just a different way of using words. But we feel pretty good about talking about physical health, and we go jogging and bicycling and hiking and swimming. We drink wheatgrass juice and all sorts of good things, and we don't have sugar, right? Because actually sugar is a mind-altering substance, and maybe it should be illegal. Well, of course everybody likes it, so we better not do that. I want to talk about caring for the mind, where the mind is including your heart and your feelings, how you feel about yourself, how you feel about your circumstances, how you, a spiritual being, of which or of whom your mind is a part. I don't know if you know this, but your mind is not part of your brain. It's part of your soul. Is that right? Not that many people know very much details about souls because they're invisible. You have one, right? You have a mind. Everybody has a mind, but you've never seen it. Or you're quite convinced you have one. You talk about your mind as if it is a thing like your car or your house or your dog or your cat. Not that your dog or a cat is a thing, that's also beings. But now your mind, what is it exactly? So since it's not part of your body, it's relatively less easy to describe and define. But we can say that your mind is a capacity or a faculty of your consciousness. And with your mind, you can think thoughts. And whatever you experience through your sense organs, your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth, your fingers, it goes to your mind right away. So this is all about perception. So you perceive people, places, things through your sense organs, but your sense organs do not do the perceiving. Your mind perceives. And the mind is the instrument of the soul for perceiving. And then your mind says, this is good, pleasant, unpleasant, I like it, I don't like it, this is meaningless, this is meaningful, this is right, this is not right, things like that, yeah? About things that you perceive. And then these things which you perceive, I mean, moments of perception, how many times do you perceive something per day? Thousands and thousands, nobody can count it. Millisecond by millisecond you perceive different things. And sometimes people say that their mind gets distracted. Do you experience distraction? I may be talking to you and making effort to hold your attention, but something may be going on over there and you'll turn around and look at it and then you'll miss what I next say. I've said it again. It's normal because our attention span is short and our ability to focus is quite limited. So there is another instrument also in the soul which works with the mind, and this is called your focus of attention. And so what you have to do in order to really concentrate on something and perceive what that is over a long period of time is you have to have a strong focus of attention to focus your mind on that thing that you intend to perceive in detail. So all of this is going on unconsciously, but that's what happens. And then you see there are memories. So you also have a region of your mind where all these sense perceptions go and sit, which is your memory. And every so often you experience something which is very forceful, sometimes even traumatic. And so you will experience this on your mind hard, and it will resonate, and it will leave a scar on your mind. And this is called mental trauma. And a lot of people are affected by trauma of the mind. And the time when every human being is most sensitive is when they are a baby and growing up as a little child. So when you experience shocks as a little child, that will scar you for life. And there's nothing anybody can do about it. So do I have to say everything all over again, or did you get it?
I think they were so concentrated, they remember everything.
Okay, so suppose there would be a bomb and it would land on here and explode. That would upset you, right? If you survived it. Is it an example of a trauma that a lot of people are experiencing at this time, including very small babies or young children. And that's like a normal kind of trauma. But when you're a very, very small child and your parents are fighting, that is as traumatic as if a bomb falls on your building. But sometimes people think children are objects and that they become people when they're 18 or something. Actually, the soul experiences all these things. It stays in the memory, and your mind operates by association. And so whenever there is any type of experience which corresponds to any experience which scarred your mind, hurt your heart, anything like this, you immediately go there, and it triggers coping mechanisms. And so pretty much everybody has developed coping mechanisms. And these are sometimes called personality defects. And when somebody displays a type of behavior that is considered bad, then along with the trauma of that person and the secondary traumas triggered by similar situations, the person is punished, which is an additional trauma. So the likelihood of mental health in this kind of social attitudes about these things is pretty much unlikely to have good mental health across the board. So from that angle, I would say it's quite important to consider the matter and see that what is good to do for the self. So let me ask you to just think deeply about yourself and go all the way back to a time very early in your life where you experienced something that you still remember because it was, a hard knock. You remember it, right? And these things have a tendency to happen from time to time, something similar. As you grow up, it might change a bit, but it predisposes you to come into circumstances that resemble that, so that it happens to you again, all the way until you're dead. So you don't really want that, right? If possible. So caring for the mind includes a few things that we can do to heal ourselves of some of this, because we don't want to carry that around. And because of the coping mechanisms that are naturally generated to protect ourselves from that happening again, which it definitely will. So you need your coping mechanisms, your defense mechanisms. These also are called ego defense mechanisms. You've heard this word before, right? Ego defense mechanism. Ego defense mechanisms are considered bad behavior. So you get penalized for it. And there may be people who try to get you to give up your ego defense mechanism or your coping mechanism. So you need to strengthen them so that they can't, because if they do, you are too vulnerable. It's quite complicated, and mostly it becomes more and more complicated because, in general, people do not give due attention to the sensitivity of the mind of a human being. And this is because of what we may want to call materialism, where the scientific community in their infinite wisdom decided that consciousness is an epiphenomenon of the brain, and that it's all basically chemical, and if somebody has some problem, you give them a drug and it'll go away. This is called pharmaceuticals. These are also mind-altering substances which suppress a person's sensitivity and, in my opinion, zombify them. You want to be zombified? Not really, right? So what it means effectively is we need to work with our pain. Because when you get these kind of scars repeatedly from a young age, you accumulate kind of multifaceted pain that you carry around, which is top secret. Never tell anybody about that, because then you would be vulnerable. As far as possible, you don't want to be vulnerable. So these are layers and layers of protective coverings, to the point that you lose contact with who you are. And so sometimes this takes the form of depression. And depression is, as many people say, I'm depressed, or their doctor will say you're depressed, or their friends and enemies will say you're depressed, which is a kind of insult. Even if it's true, still insulting to tell somebody something like that. So when we're talking about caring for the mind, we're talking about caring for the mind which has been hurt, aggressed, damaged, distorted. So many words like that. And so therefore healing is necessary. So a lot of different ways to heal different things. But my feeling about this is that it's necessary to go back to your original pain. So one of the things that I am working with at the moment is the effect of colonialism on different people in different places. And I was working with a friend of mine who's writing a book, his experiences of growing up in South Africa, apartheid system. And that involves quite a lot of brutality, especially if you stand up and say no. If you stand up and say no, you will be tortured. Your family will be tortured. You'll probably be killed. Your family members will probably be killed. You'll be denied education, denied right to work, and generally destroyed as much as possible, which goes down through the generations as a legacy, you see. And then even when there is political freedom, the legacy still goes on. And so this also affects mental health. Because mental health has a lot to do with how you see yourself. And so depending on your religion, depending on your education, depending on the family you grew up in, depending on which country you live in, all these things, you are taught how to see yourself. And if you don't see yourself the way you're supposed to see yourself, you are considered weird or deviant or need to be fixed, something like this. And so then people may say, okay, well, why can't I just be normal like everybody else, you know? So then when anybody says that to me, I say, well, why on earth would you want to be normal? That is so boring, right? What is normal? Is it something like a fixed thing which has, you know, is supposed to be like that? No individuality, no creativity, you know, no reactions to anything. It's normal. Who would want to be that? Too easy to manipulate. You want to be manipulated? Probably not, right? No. I think you like to be free, is that right? At least according to these pictures, it would be quite nice to be free. Don't you think? And then sometimes people say, you know, I really don't know who I am. On a deep level, you know, who are you? Of course you have absolutely no clue. Nobody does. Because your identity, your real identity is so deep, you know. And you get told who you are, that your nationality, your tribe, your race, your religion, your age, height, weight, whatever physical measurement can be identified, and you fill up a form and say, okay, that's my identity. Has no connection with who you are. Who you are has to do with something very, very, very deep inside. And one thing that you can identify is a certain resonance. Like, I think in this land everybody likes to sing. Is that right? You like to sing. That means you're sensitive to resonance. And in song, you can have a note which is on key, or it could be off. And in the musical instrument, if you have a string instrument, it generally goes out of tune, so you have to tighten up the string and you play it, and yeah, okay, so this is right. Same way with the soul, it's like there is a tuning up of the soul that's possible, where you can actually sense your individual note or resonance, is it? So that's absolutely individual to you personally, your note. And whenever there is any kind of trauma, it damages that note to such an extent you can't find it anymore. So to find your note is a very good thing. And sometimes when people are working through their pain, it becomes quite irrelevant to have that person utter the sound of their pain. I know. Because it's very specific to your experience of your pain, and you can make a sound. And when you make the sound of your pain, which may be a loud sound, and you recognize it, you say, yeah, that is my pain. And in comparison with that, you have the other sound, which is that is the sound of my heart. And when you begin the work of working through your pain, every time you get past a certain part of it, it takes you back to your heart. And you slowly find yourself through resonance, through feeling. You see, in the mind, the part of your consciousness that has to do with reasoning can't do this. It's outside the range of your intellectual capabilities. But we live in a world where a lot of attention is given to intellectual capabilities, and this other part is considered not real and discarded or devalued, which means that something very important about yourself is discarded and devalued. And you're even trained, if you get enough education, to devalue yourself on that basis, which is not a very good idea, but nobody knows that they do it. So in that sense, it's quite good to challenge prevailing social attitudes that don't make any sense. And so if you do that, of course you're deviant and weird, and probably a criminal. Actually, not really. You're a natural born human being, sensitive. See? And looking at these pictures, it goes all the way back to this one, which is the early one. You see, this one. This is a sort of a script, you see. And this is not an intellectually produced script. This is something that comes from direct contact of the person with life. And so our direct contact with life is very intuitive, feeling, sensing, sensing each other, sensing the wind and the water and the grass and the fruits and all of this, you see, this is life. This is nature and the human being in tune with each other. Nature is very beautiful because it has a tendency to go into a harmonious state. Even if you wreck it, it'll find a way, if you leave it alone a bit, to find back its natural harmony. And a human being is also very natural, but the human being is highly spiritual. You see? Now, highly spiritual is not the same as religious. I make a difference between those two. So your spirit is spiritual, and your conditioning can be religious, but conditioning wouldn't really make you spiritual, rather may diminish your spirituality because of prevailing social attitudes and all this. So I think a lot of important information or intuitive information that is about caring for the mind. It's about returning to some very ancient aspect of the self that had been lost, taken away, damaged, etc., etc. But you know the soul is immortal, right? You know this, yeah? You know or you don't know? Yeah. Where do you go when you die? somewhere, right? Yeah? Maybe you don't know, but you know that you go, right? When anybody dies, if you're around somebody who dies and then they died, they don't say he stopped. They say he's gone or she's gone. That means you go. You go somewhere. But you might not go somewhere physical. Because in Philippines, if somebody dies and you want to talk to them, you can. Call the soul. Right? This is a well-known thing. This is an ancient practice, very ancient practice. So when you're looking at going back to a state of wholeness and you're fully integrated into yourself, integrated into your community, integrated with nature and everything, that's ancient. And that is in your soul. And when you die, that goes with you to wherever you go. And if you go, you can come back also, right? Because if you go, how did you get here? You must have come here from somewhere, right? So if you came here from somewhere, you're here. And you brought something with you from somewhere. See, because if you're immortal, you're always there. Immortal means there's never been any time when you didn't exist as an individual being. And all your history is with you. And whatever is your history of now, it goes with you wherever you go. See? And if you come back, then it comes back with you. See? So some of your pain is from long, long ago. Comes with you. In India, they speak of it as karma. You heard this word, karma? So people use this word sometimes with different meanings, but karma is really about, partly it's about what you do, but also it's about what gets done to you. You see? And people don't know that when something bad is done to you, it goes into the soul, it stays there. And it's a contamination, it's a corruption, it's a distortion, it's a, something in that shouldn't be there. And when you do good action, any kind of good action, good for you, good for somebody, good for the general atmosphere, that also resonates in you. And it also has the capacity to diminish the corruption. So this is a very good thing. So it is, people say, do good things and don't do bad things. Everybody knows that. When nobody knows, do not allow any bad thing to come into your soul and contaminate you, right? And the thing is, when something bad happens to you, how do you make it not happen to you when it already happened? It's a question, And so part of taking care of the mind is not so much to do with what you did that's not according to your conscience, because you all have a conscience, right? Everybody has one. Do you listen to it? Not much, right? It is the most reliable thing you have. So it's very important to give it utmost importance and value in your life. It is your very most best reliable friend you have, because it will indicate very subtly do this, don't do that, go here, don't go there, this is not a good person, this person's okay for you, and you need to rest now. Don't give yourself a hard time. All these messages come from your conscience. And when you don't listen to your conscience, the voice of conscience, which is already very, very quiet, it gets even quieter or it stops altogether because it says, you're not listening, so I'm going somewhere else. I'm not talking to you anymore. You know? So, very important. This is the most reliable thing you have. And if you haven't given it much attention, start giving it attention, and it will kind of come back to life, and it will help you enormously. So when you're concerned to care for a mind who has been damaged, and you work with your conscience in that, it will also tell you little things about, like little advice when things attempt to come into your awareness, to penetrate your mind and give you damage. And it will help you to put a shield. You need a bulletproof soul, right? Because somebody will say something that hurts your feelings, right? Or they will not say something which also hurts your feelings. And so, letting your feelings get hurt means losing spiritual power. So, you already don't have that much. So, part of caring for the mind means increasing your amount of spiritual power, and also taking care that you don't allow anything that decreases it. So all of this is leading up to a certain kind of strength. Because if you're very strong, flexible, then you can defend yourself against different types of attacks. Because I think one of the things that is what trauma is all about is how people treat each other. And why does a person treat another person badly? A number of reasons. One is because they're weak. The other is because they're reacting to something that somebody else did to them somewhere, and they couldn't stand up to that person, so they'll do something to you because it's safer. You know, there's a number of reasons like this, but when you analyze it from this sort of angle, and somebody's doing something, you take care of yourself because they're doing something, okay, they're doing something, saying something, whatever. But it doesn't have to be to you. So a little phrase that you can use in such circumstances, you can say to yourself quickly, it is happening, no doubt it is happening, but it's not happening to me. This person is shouting and screaming, whatever, have a nice day. It's just one more TV show, you know. And then you create a certain distance between yourself and that performance. That's very good. Enjoy your karma. But there's nothing to do with me. And this is one of the little tips, tricks to prevent that thing from penetrating. Because if you don't do that, it goes right in. then you have to deal with one more wound. And you've already got enough, you see, so it's a good thing to do. And then, you see, all these things that disturb us, we say they're bad, right? And something which is we like, we say it's good. So we create our definition of bad and good according to if it troubles us or if it makes us feel good, you see. So to identify whether something is good or bad according to how it feels is actually quite deceptive. Because to figure out whether something is good or bad, you need different criteria from if it feels good or bad. Sometimes a doctor may have to do a procedure on you if it feels pretty bad, but eventually it's quite good because it fixed your broken bone or something like that. So it's actually not bad. It doesn't feel good, but it's actually good, you see. And if you have to face yourself, that feels really bad. Nobody wants to face themselves, right? Did you ever try? No, you wouldn't, unless you really, really had to. Because it's very unpleasant. But it's actually very good. Because if you face yourself, then you can be like true. And that's hard. But it's very good. Because then you're no longer deceiving yourself or pretending to yourself and everybody else. Because to care for the mind has a lot to do with being true, truthful, true to yourself. And why do people not tell the truth? Is to protect their ego mask. So they won't tell the truth, because if you tell the truth, you're letting down your ego mask, you're exposing your pain, and they might hurt you when you're completely exposed. But it's also a very important part of healing from one's pain. Because it allows your pain, which may have arrived in a very early age and been very gigantic, when you're older it's kind of smaller and more manageable. And when you face it, then you say, oh, yeah, I can manage this. And that also helps you get back into that resonance, that note, tune yourself. It brings you into a place that I call being in your power. And when you're in your power, you're in very different body language, different expression on your face, different relationship with what's happening, any challenges or something. You're in your power. Okay, you want to talk to me? Yes, what do you want to say? Otherwise, you see. And it's up to you. You want to be in your power or overpowered by someone else. So a lot of the things that is handed down, legacy, especially in the circumstance of colonialism and so on, is specifically designed to prevent a person from coming into their power so they can be used, abused, manipulated and exploited. Okay, fair enough, but then for how long? When you come into your power, you essentially present yourself as someone that cannot be done to. See? And you consolidate, gradually consolidate yourself in your power, which means you come closer to who you are. And then the other thing that is very important in this is to fill yourself with spiritual power. And not very many people know how to do this. So sometimes you may resource yourself by going into the mountains or into the water, because you do get a lot of energy from nature. And this energy that you get from nature will benefit you spiritually to some extent, but probably not enough. And so therefore it's better to go to the actual source of spiritual energy, which you know what that is, right? It's a higher power, a higher being who is invisible, virtually intangible, but can be perceived not through your eyes or nose or ears or mouth or fingers or anything, but through your mind. So your mind is the only thing you have with which to make contact with that. So therefore, if your mind is in good shape, that's good, because you will have good connection. And you will, what do you do with connection is you take power. You have a cell phone, I suppose, right? And every so often it runs out of juice. You're looking for a plug in the wall, and where is my charger? You plug it in and you feel better. Okay, it's charging. I just wait a little while and it'll charge. And then everything works. This is an analogy for the soul, because the soul is the one that gives life to the body. That means anything you do, anything that happens to you, any decisions you make, any mistakes you make, all of these is done by the soul, or experienced by the soul. So it goes into the soul. That means soul is very important. And the mind is part of the soul. Right? And so is your capacity to focus your attention. That's part of your soul. And so are all your memories, part of your soul. So is your pain, part of your soul, you see. And so it's really about healing the soul and restoring the soul, the immortal soul, the eternal soul, to its original condition. Can you remember back to the beginning of eternity? What was your condition at that time? Well, you can imagine it. You know, a lot of people, they say, well, God made my soul, right? Do you think that? Yeah, so does he make mistakes? Yes, no? Yes or no? Yeah. No? Of course not. What are you thinking? So your original condition is absolutely the very, very best particular version of you that there is. And when you buy something new, like you get a new computer, for example, buy a new computer, that's a pretty good thing to have. And then what happens to anything new? After a while, it gets deteriorated, gets old. Another version comes sometimes that's better so that you can buy that, but it's too expensive, so you stick with your old one. But it gets old, it doesn't work so well, and it gets dirty, and it gets some tea spilled on it, so then it gets mucked up, and things like that. Everything. What happens to your body? It gets old. Is there anything that you know of that gets young? Anything that exists in the context of time deteriorates. And that includes the immortal soul. So this is a very deep thing to understand, how you can be eternal and immortal and deteriorate. And if you deteriorate and you're eternal and immortal, you can only deteriorate so much. At which point there has to be an intervention from the one who is the only one who's capable of restoring souls to their original condition, right? There's a power source, right? So you have to plug in and take power. And then when you can experience this yourself. There are certain days where you feel well rested, you feel empowered, right? And you don't make nearly so many mistakes, and you're not in a bad mood when you feel fresh and empowered. Yes or no? Yes. So you've got a little bit of power and everything, okay. But if you get a lot of power, then more is okay for a bit longer. And if you continue to fill yourself with power, keep, growing in your spiritual strength, then ultimately you could understand that a point comes when you're restored to your original condition. At which point, what do you do when you're perfect? What do you do? Well, you say, I can die now. Right? So then you can go to heaven, of course, and then come back, ready to roll, you see. This is one scenario. And the process of doing all this is repairing your mind, repairing your heart, going through your pain, finding your resonance, coming into your power, filling yourself with strength from an external source. And this also has a huge impact on your actual mind in terms of repairing it. So I should probably stop because my time must have gone way past, right? So I will stop now. And you may have some questions. Dini may have some questions. And thank you very much for your very kind attention.